Hello and welcome to the Death Row and Executions channel. My name is Paco Rivera and I do presentations on an execution that will happen soon, including a story on what got the death row inmate sentenced to death. You can also follow me on Facebook for updates and more death row news. There will be a link to my Facebook in the description below. Also check out my other channel here on YouTube called The Maximum Sentence, where I cover a recent crime and conviction and the maximum penalty handed down. There will also be a link for that. A few weeks ago, Dusty Spencer became the oldest death row inmate to be executed in the state of Florida since the United States Supreme Court reinstated capital punishment in 1976. Dusty Spencer was 70 years old. The day after Spencer was executed, Florida Governor Ron DeSantis signed another death warrant, this time for Dominick Occhicone Jr., who is 80 years old. And now he will become the oldest inmate ever to be executed in Florida since 1976. Occhicone was born in 1945. That's the year that World War II ended. By the way, I have seen several different pronunciations for this last name. I'm using the one that appears to be the most common. The name is originally Italian, and people with that last name in Italy mostly pronounce it as Occhicone. But it seems when they came to America, it was changed to Occhicone. So that's the one that I'll use. My apologies to anyone of that last name who pronounces it differently. Occhicone will be executed for a crime that he committed in the year 1986. That's 40 years ago. So he was 40 years old when he committed that crime. This is yet another senseless situation with a man who refused to move on with his life after being rejected by a woman and instead decides to act out of revenge and kill, because he's one of those men that can't accept rejection. But he didn't kill the woman that he had been dating. She managed to escape from the home where she was living with her children, in the home of her parents, her father and mother, Raymond and Martha Artzner. I don't have a whole lot of details on this case, especially about the victims, so that I can provide a tribute in memory of them. So this video will be a bit shorter. But this is what I was able to gather. Anita Garrity was born in 1952. So she was about 7 years younger than Occhicone. Today, that woman is 74 years old. And according to some recent documents I found, she still lives in Holiday, Florida, where the crime happened 40 years ago. Anita and Dominick Occhicone began dating in the year 1982. They lived together very briefly between 1984 and 1985 with her 2 children and Occhicone's 5-year-old son. And that year of 1985, they became engaged to marry. However, Anita would later testify that Occhicone had a, quote, very hot temper, unquote. And by September of 1985, she called off the engagement and broke up with Occhicone, and she moved into her parents' house. It was also well documented that Anita's parents, Raymond and Martha Artzner, had never approved of Dominick Occhicone Jr. According to reports, following the breakup, Occhicone's behavior grew increasingly volatile. He stalked and harassed Anita continuously. He sent flower arrangements to her workplace frequently, trying to win her back. And he routinely showed up at her parents' home unannounced in the middle of the night, knocking and pounding on her bedroom's sliding glass doors. According to Anita, sometimes knocking about 20 or more times before finally giving up and leaving when she would not let him in. The home of Raymond and Martha Artzner was located in the city of Holiday, Florida, in Pasco County, located about 30 miles northwest of Tampa, on the Gulf side of Florida. Raymond, originally from Cleveland, Ohio, was 66 years old, and his wife, Martha, originally from Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, was 62. As I said, Anita was living there with her two daughters, and during the early morning hours of June 10, 1986, a Tuesday, Anita woke up to someone knocking on the sliding glass door in her bedroom. Everyone was home at this time, including her two daughters. It was Dominick Occhicone again, but she refused to open the door to speak with him, yelling back at him through the doors that she will call police. So Occhicone left, but he returned about an hour later. This time, he had a gun with him. By this time, everyone was still home except for one of Anita's daughters. I'm guessing by the time Occhicone returned, that girl had probably left for school. Anyway, Occhicone once again began yelling and pounding on the door and windows. But when he was not allowed in, he proceeded to cut the telephone lines to the house outside. Shortly after that, Anita's father, Raymond Artzner, went outside swinging a broomstick at Occhicone and telling Occhicone to leave. Occhicone shot him. Anita was aware of what happened, so she grabbed her daughter and ran out through a door of the house and escaped unharmed to the home of a neighbor where she called 911. Meanwhile, Occhicone broke into the house through another door, not knowing that Anita had escaped from the home. Once inside, he immediately shot Anita's mother, Martha, 4 times, killing her. He then fled from the area. A Pasco County Sheriff's deputy found Raymond Artzner, still barely alive after being shot, on the ground outside the house with a gunshot wound to his chest. Before he died, he told the deputy that Dominick Occhicone had shot him. A sheriff's dog, a bloodhound, was called in, and it successfully tracked Occhicone's scent to some nearby railroad tracks where deputies found Occhicone and they arrested him. At his 1987 trial, his defense argued that Occhicone's history of alcohol abuse and mental distress from his breakup with Anita had, quote, left him incapable of forming intent to kill, unquote. Whatever that's supposed to mean. Anyway, a jury didn't agree, and that jury recommended by a vote of 7-5 that Occhicone be sentenced to death for the murder of Martha Artzner, and he received a life sentence for killing Raymond Artzner. I can only assume that the reason he didn't also get a death sentence for killing Raymond was because the old man had attacked him with a broomstick, with that somehow removing the capital murder element from the crime. Here is Occhicone at a hearing that took place about 10 years later, about 10 years after he was sentenced, in 1997, an evidentiary hearing regarding his claims of ineffective assistance of counsel. Of course, very often when an accused loses the case and gets a death penalty, it's because his lawyers were ineffective. And this is what he looks like today at 80 years old, with an execution scheduled to take place this month on July 28th. Remember that I mentioned earlier that Dominick Occhicone Jr. in 1985 had a son in his custody. That boy's name is also Dominick Occhicone, so he would be Dominick Occhicone III. Well, another of the father's defense at his trial, trying to minimize his actions and hopefully get a lighter sentence, had also presented evidence that he was a loving father who was taking very good care of his son. Well, that boy is now 46 years old and still living in Holiday, Florida, and it appears that he is a mess. In 2024, 2 years ago, he went missing, and the Pasco County Sheriff's Office sent out an alert to the public that he was a missing, endangered 44-year-old. An alert followed later that Dominick Occhicone Jr. was found and is safe. Please go ahead and hit the subscribe button for more of these death row and upcoming execution stories so that you'll learn it when the next one comes out. You can also follow me on Facebook for updates and more death row news. There will be a link to my Facebook in the description below. My name is Paco Rivera. Thank you for watching. Take care and bye for now.